Daffodils, Kubla Khan. Ozymandias, the Raven. The great literary flowering of the European Romantic era has inspired, defined, and challenged Western culture for over 200 years. Romantic poets from Coleridge to Shelley have captured the public imagination and pathos for generations. The Romantic era also saw the introduction of some of the first respected public female poets, who followed its tenets but with a feminine twist. Though sadly less famous today than her illustrious male colleagues, Felicia Hemans was the epitome of the female romantic poet, widely regarded and respected in her own time despite her gender and slightly different romantic style. Contemporaries had nothing but praise for many of the privileged, beautiful works Hemans created during her short life. Felicia was born in Duke Street, Liverpool on the 25th September 1793 to an Irish merchant named Bryan and her mother of Italian-German extract. On her mother's side, she could claim the ancestry of the noble and distinguished Venetian house of Veniero. Born fifth out of 7 children, Felicia was shown from an early age to be extremely precocious. Ironically, her talents were further nurtured by the commercial reverse which befell her father before she turned even 7. The family was forced to move to the Welsh countryside amid the mountains and the sea. This scene greatly enhanced the love of nature in the poetically minded child, while her mother devoted extreme attention to her education. The only real criticism Felicia ever received was for her first publication, a collection of her early poems from ages 8 to 13. Though vexed and disappointed by the criticism, Felicia quickly recovered and continued her education with her mother, to whom she was passionately attached. A contender for Felicia's affections soon appeared in the form of Captain Hemans, whom she met at the naive age of 15 and married 3 years later. A more antithetical matchup could not possibly be conceived. Hemans was as pragmatic and prosaic as Felicia was imaginative and unpractical. The additions of their 5 sons failed to rectify their dissolving marriage, and, finally, by mutual concession, Captain Hemans went abroad shortly before the birth of his 5th son, never to return. The divorce ends anything of a romantic character in Felicia's publications, although the coloring of high-toned romance in her mind and writings never died out, but to the last continued to permeate, enliven, and beautify that other element and staple of her life, its sweet and earnest domesticity. 2 years following her separation from her husband, Felicia befriended her first contemporary, Reverend Reginald Heber, who admired her work and wished to help influence her literary development. Shortly after, Felicia obtained 2 literary prizes for poems, and she ambitiously set out to compose a 5-act tragedy, The Vespers of Palmero. Though the play met with some success in Edinburgh, the London performance flopped massively, thereby discouraging Felicia from further theatrical works. 1825 saw Felicia, her sons, mother, and sister all move into the same house in Wales together, which marked the beginning of the happiest and most productive part of her life. During this period, Felicia corresponded with other female literary figures and published her most famous works, Casabianca and The Forest Sanctuary. All good things, however, eventually come to pass, and in 1827 Felicia's mother died. Her death greatly shook Felicia, for they had been close her entire life, and it marked the beginning of a series of debilitating illnesses that would prematurely claim Felicia's life. Felicia and her sons were forced to abandon their cherished Welsh home and move to Wavertree in order to protect Felicia's frail health and find better educational opportunities. The Wavertree experiment was varied by excursions to meet famous romantic literary figures such as Sir Walter Scott and Wordsworth, the latter of which quickly became a close personal friend of Felicia's. However, Wavertree failed to improve either her waning health or her children's education, so Felicia determined to move one last time to Dublin to be with her brother. Though greatly weakened by her worsening illness, Felicia continued to create beautiful poems in Ireland until rendered a quadriplegic and finally dying on May 16, 1835. As one of the leading second-generation romantics, Hemans' work thoroughly embodied many romantic tenets, yet retained a distinctive femininity, emphasis on family, beauty of language, and strongly Christian perspective that sets her work apart from all others. One work that particularly encapsulates Hemans' poetical style is her Hymn by the Sickbed of a Mother, part of Hemans' 1834 Hymn for Childhood publication, but written earlier at the time of her mother's death. An extremely literal poem involving the pleas for relief from a distraught daughter to God at the deathbed of her mother, this hymn masterfully uses figurative language to allude to biblical events that may generate sympathy with the father. In the first stanza, extensive imagery, such as "In the olive shade when the dark hour came," is alluding to Jesus' arrest in a garden of Gethsemane, when God grieves as he lets death take his son to the slaughter. Similarly, in the third stanza, Hemans uses personification of the starry sky to allude to the coming of sin into the world that also causes God such terrible grief. The daughter, Hemans, then asks in both scenarios that God hollow this grief, a form of equivocation since two meanings apply. She wants God to take away the grief's power by making it holy and therefore of him, thereby literally making the grief hollow and powerless in her. By skillfully using this litany of literary tools, Hemans is able to convey the utter despair of the daughter upon the death of her mother much more effectively. The poem also portrays multiple romantic tenets, naturally, especially a strong emphasis on emotions, melancholia, and grief in her pleading for the father for relief. Additionally, her imaginative depiction of biblical events in the poem portrays a romantic emphasis on the supernatural. Yet, the poem is full of Hemans' singular characteristics as well. As with all her poems, Hemans' distinctive femininity pervades the diction of the hymn, especially in her portrayal of God the Father as meek with adoring followers. Typically in Christian literature, the Father is depicted as the righteous, more uncompromising, and just aspect of the Trinity, but Hemans is appealing to the qualities usually used to describe Jesus or the Spirit as well as woman. Hemans' tendency towards elegant language emerges throughout the hymn, the beautiful clarity of her language illustrating her grief in a way no simple supplication could. Christianity and family, Hemans' core values, combine in her appeal to God as the Father to understand her grief and hollow it. Her work may not be widely publicized today, but her unique literary genius and voice proves that she truly belongs among the greats of the Romantic era.